Okay, so this is going to be part 2. Okay, so just to review, why is the left side thicker than the right side? Yeah, why are the walls thicker? Yeah, because the left side of the heart has a much harder job. If you remember, the left side is involved in systemic circulation, which is basically everywhere around the body except for the part to the lung. So the left side is more muscular than the right side. Okay, so last time we left off talking about the parts of the heart, right? And we talked about the blood flow patterns. So I want to talk a little bit about blood pressure today and a little bit about heart rate. Okay. So, what you guys have seen this before, right? You know what this is called? What's this called?
That's the monitor on the thing.
Yeah, it's called an EKG, electrocardiogram. So, this shows you your heart rate, and it's a way to, determine whether or not there's something funny going on with your heart. Make sure that everything's okay. Okay, another question? No? I think it's called EKG though. Yeah.
The shocking of the heart. What happens inside the heart?
It's the heart is actually it runs on its own current. So the term is myogenic, which means that the way muscles work is they have to be stimulated by your nervous system, but the heart actually generates its own response. So in other words, it does not need the nervous system to make it contract. So the way it works is through it is an electrical system basically. So I can show you the animation after, but it's basically a flow of electricity that goes across the heart. If that doesn't work properly, or if the heart stops, you might have to restart it. That's where that defibrillator comes in. Yeah. This, by the way, so you guys just saw the parts of the heart and you saw the animation. See this little bump here? This one there versus this bump here? Okay, so this is when the top half of the heart contracts, the atria, and this is when the ventricles contract. Alright? So this is atria contracting, ventricles contracting. You'll notice there's a bit of a delay. It's not much of a delay. It's like a 1/10 of a second. But why do we need to have a delay? Yeah, because what would happen in that case is the ventricles are stronger than the atria. If you need time for the valves to close, so the blood is pumped through these valves. The valves close, and then the ventricles squeeze. If that doesn't happen, if there was no delay, the blood would actually go backwards. It wouldn't go through into the ventricles. So that's the reason why there's a delay. This little bump here is the heart actually recharging itself. So the way you read these EKGs, I think they're EKGs. I don't know why they're not called ECGs, but I think it's both, right? So this is atria contracting, ventricles contracting, recharge. Atria contracts, ventricle contracts, recharge. Okay? So, I thought I would show you this because I'm sure you've probably seen this, or maybe you've had testing done yourself. This is the cardiac cycle. So you know the sounds that you hear? If you were to say, what's the sound of a heartbeat? It's ba-bum. Does anyone know where those sounds come from? The heart. Your heart. You listen to your heartbeat. What's actually creating the sound?
Oh, it's the blood flow?
It's actually your valves opening and closing. So the first the heart rate, the boom sound, the first sound are the AV valves closing. So when they snap shut, they make a sound. And then when your heart empties, the other set of valves in the arteries snap closed, and that's the second sound. So the ba-boom sound. The second sound is the valves closing when the blood leaves your heart. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the heart itself, like heart rate and blood pressure. So cardiac output is how much blood your heart pumps out in a minute. And it's determined by two things. One is how much your heart beats, and the other one is how much blood is being pumped out per beat. And this output can be affected by certain things. So this chart summarizes some of the factors that would affect your cardiac output. So your cardiac output, I said, is a function of your heart rate and how much blood you pump out. So I have a trivia question for you. An athlete would have high or low heart rate? High. Whoa. Low heart rate.
When they're running around. Yeah.
When anyone's running around, they're going to have a high heart rate. Okay. Okay. Wow, you guys are very literal. Resting. Yes. An athlete at resting heart rate would be very what?
Low.
Compared to, now why low? Why? So if you think of this formula for cardiac output, if their heart rate is low, that means that something else must be greater.
Blood pressure.
Right, stroke volume. So an athlete would have a higher stroke volume, but a lower heart rate.
Wait, why? That's a good thing, right?
Yes, that means that your heart is very efficient. If you're pumping out so much blood in one beat, maybe someone else has to beat twice as much to pump out the same amount of blood. So an athlete could deliver more blood because every time the heart beats, they're pumping out more blood. It's more efficient. Here are some of the things that affect your cardiac output. Green means to increase it. Red means to decrease it. So what would adrenaline, and you don't have to memorize this chart, okay, because some of them are pretty obvious, you probably already know. Like what would adrenaline, which is also known as epinephrine, what does adrenaline do to your cardiac output? It increases it. It has two effects, you can see. It increases your heart rate, but it also increases your stroke volume. So it's going to increase how many beats per minute and how much blood is pumped out per beat. What about an increase in body temperature? Will that increase your cardiac output or decrease it? It will increase it. Why? Why will it increase your heart rate? What are you trying to get rid of when your body temperature goes up? Heat. How do you get rid of heat? By sending more blood and circulating more blood. Because more blood goes to your skin, and that's how you get rid of the heat. Yep.
I don't know if this is true, but apparently
Probably not.
when ice cubes on your wrist,
Yeah.
when you're like really hot, it cools down. That's why.
I don't know. I've never heard of that. Maybe it is true. I've never heard of that. It's possible. Thanks, Julia. What is the effect of, in this chart, a chemical called acetylcholine? Well, red means to, yeah, so what would acetylcholine do? Yeah, decreases. If you take Great Hall Bio, we'll talk a lot about chemicals and their effects on systems, and normally you'll see that there are what are called antagonistic chemicals. In English class, you hear about the protagonist and the antagonist.
Yes.
So antagonistic chemicals are chemicals that do the opposite to control something. So like, for example, if epinephrine raises the heart rate, then there should be an antagonist that lowers it. In this case, the antagonist would be acetylcholine. Okay. In a stress response, imagine that this is happening, okay? Imagine you come across a person who's laying on the floor, and they've had an injury where they're bleeding internally, what would be their heart rate?
Wait, heart rate?
Heart rate would be lower or higher?
I'd say lower. I'd be higher because it was stressful.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about blood pressure, and we'll come back to the answer to that question. Right?
Why do you do that?
So blood pressure.
Oh my gosh. I just want to know now. Can we not
Let's.
go back?
Yeah, we're gonna relax there, Miss Pryor. Do you have any prior convictions? Okay. Get it? No, it's not funny. Okay. Get any prior convictions? Not that funny? No. Okay. Yeah.
You're so slow, honey.
So, blood pressure. Does anyone know what blood pressure is?
It's the pressure of your blood. No, it's
On what though?
it's your blood flow and your purpose.
No, I don't. I know you're looking at the formula, but what, in your own words, what is blood pressure, Angeli? What is it? It's the pressure of what?
My blood.
Guess what?
What?
Yes, it's the pressure on the blood vessels, okay? And normally it's measured around your arteries. So this shows you the effects of certain things on blood pressure. So for example, if your cardiac output goes up, your blood pressure goes up. If your blood volume goes down, your blood pressure goes down. If your blood vessels constrict, your blood pressure goes up. So if you come across a person who's had internal bleeding, see, all you have to wait was 1 minute for the answer. You got no patience at all, right?
Yeah, none.
What would happen to your blood? So what would happen to your heart rate?
Wait, what is that? I'm confused. What would happen to your heart rate?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Get the question.
Well, I'm asking you, what do you think would happen? So here, right now we're talking about blood pressure, right? Because that's actually connected to the answer. So you come across a person who has internal bleeding, okay? You can see from this description that blood pressure is the force of blood on blood vessels, and you can see that there are factors that affect blood pressure. So if your cardiac output goes up, that means your heart rate goes up, for instance, blood pressure goes up. If your blood volume goes down, your blood pressure goes down. So if you're bleeding internally, would you have more or less blood volume? Well, if you're bleeding, that means the blood's coming out of the blood. Remember, we have a closed system. Our blood vessels, all the blood should be in our blood vessels because we have a closed circulatory system. So if you have internal bleeding, will there be less or more blood in your blood vessels? All right. No, in your blood vessels. Less. So your blood volume goes down. What happens to your blood pressure? So if you have a person who has internal bleeding, their blood pressure would be lower, but your body wants to keep things status quo. So if your blood pressure goes down, what could your body do to restore it? According to this. What else? But you can't tell that if you're watching a person, you can't tell that their blood vessels are constricted. Well, maybe you could. But what could you tell? Yes. Because if the blood volume goes down, blood pressure goes down. But your body wants to maintain a balance. So how do you raise blood pressure if it goes down? By increasing your cardiac output. So in other words, your cardiac output goes up, your heart rate goes up because your blood pressure drops. Yeah. What would happen if you were exercising? What about your blood pressure?
It lowers.
Goes up. Blood pressure in someone who's exercising will go up. Now, what's the point of increasing your blood pressure when you're exercising? So take a look at this, okay? This is a graph that shows you blood pressure in different vessels. So you'll notice that the blood pressure is this black line. And you can see that for the arteries, which are the ones in pink here, and the little arteries, the blood pressure is there's a range. You can see it goes from here down to here. So when you go and take your blood pressure, you get two values, right? You get a systolic value and a diastolic value. Tomorrow for fun, I can actually show you how to do this. We actually have the blood pressure cuffs, okay? So we'll do it tomorrow, yeah. So we'll do it tomorrow, okay, for fun. So you'll notice that here's your systolic, and here's your diastolic. Diastolic pressure is when the heart is filling up with blood. It's not pumping the blood out. So the blood pressure in your arteries is lower because the heart is filling up. The systolic is when the blood is pumped out of the heart. So when the blood is being forced into the arteries, the blood volume increases, the pressure goes up. You'll notice that the blood pressure stays constant in the capillaries and in the veins. So here's a question. Where's it highest? Arteries, capillaries, or veins? In the arteries. Okay. Is there a connection between blood pressure and speed? There is, right? There is a connection between blood pressure and speed. You'll notice that it's a little bit higher over here. Where the pressure is higher, and you can see, as the pressure goes down, the speed goes down. Okay? You can see that on this end. We know that there's a problem. If you have a patient who has high blood pressure, is that good or bad? I mean resting, because it causes when your blood pressure is higher when you're exercising. Resting. Why? It's bad because it's probably an indication that this person has something wrong. There's something wrong with them, right? Maybe the arteries are narrowed or something. But what if your patient has low blood pressure? Is that bad or good? Bad. Why? So take a look at the connection between pressure and speed. This means that your patient is not moving the blood around quickly enough. What's the problem with that? Who cares if the blood doesn't move around quickly? What does your body need? Oxygen, nutrients. So if your blood pressure is too low, that means those cells are not getting enough what? Oxygen and nutrients quickly enough, right? The reason why I'm telling you this is because you can see there's a direct connection between pressure and speed. If you want to deliver nutrients and oxygen faster, your blood pressure has to go up. Now remember I said to you that we were going to talk about the difference between the three types of hearts. The frog. Yeah, okay, so here's the thing about the frog. What's the disadvantage when we look at the three-chambered heart versus the four-chambered heart? Remember what the problem is? No, I didn't even tell you the problem is. No, but we did talk about something that is related to this. We talked about a problem in the heart. We said if the heart has a hole here, the blood will mix between the good and bad blood, right? And that's not good because then what happens is if you think about your cardiac cycle, if some of this oxygen poor blood mixes with oxygen rich, when the heart pumps blood to your body, there's not going to be as much oxygen, right? You'll have less. When you look at the way the frog's heart is set up, you'll notice something really interesting. The top half looks exactly the same. You have the right side, and then you have the left side. Oops, sorry. And you'll notice that the right side will send blood to the lungs because it has a pulmonary artery. So guess where the right side is going to send blood to? The lungs. Just like we do. And then you have the left side that's going to send blood to the aorta. Just like we do. So the top half looks exactly the same. But what's going on in the bottom half? It's one chamber. So why is the three-chambered heart not as efficient as a two-chambered heart? Because the blood ends up, we just talked about it. The blood mixes. The blood mixes, guys. Think about that. You have the right side of the heart that sends blood to the lungs. And then where does that go? To the left side of the heart. Then you have the left side of the heart that sends blood to your body. So the top half of a frog heart is exactly the same as the top half of a human heart. But the problem is, there's only one chamber. So you have this oxygen-rich blood coming back to the left side, and then you have this oxygen-poor blood on the right side, and it mixes. It mixes in one chamber. It's not, for the frog it's okay, because obviously, if a little baby frog can grow up to become an adult frog and have babies, it's fine for them. But what is the drawback if you compare a frog to a human or mammal? Because mammals are four-chambered or birds are four-chambered. Who would have more endurance? Who would be able to deliver more oxygen nutrients? We can. Because our blood is separated. So we don't have this mixing of good and bad blood. So our heart is more efficient. But for a frog, it's good enough. Now, why is this better than this? There's no mixing here. There's no mixing at all. But there's a different problem here. So this is a two-chambered heart. So you got this blood, right? Here's the top half. So you can see you got the atrium on top. So this is blood coming from the body. So would that be oxygen rich or oxygen poor? Oxygen poor. Okay. So this is oxygen poor. It goes from the atrium to the ventricles, same order, but that's it. There is no other half of the heart. It's just two chambers. Then where does the blood go? Yeah, to the gills. Out the aorta, then to the gills. Why the gills? Because the gills are like the lungs, right? Okay. Here's the thing. What blood vessels are you using to pick up oxygen in the gills? Which ones? What does diffusion occur through? Capillaries. Now, the blood that leaves the gills and goes around the body and back to the heart. When you think about the vessels that come out of the gills, go around the body, and come back to the heart. Are they under high pressure or are they under low pressure? So the blood leaving a fish's heart goes out an artery. It goes to the gills. The gaseous change is through what blood vessel? Capillaries. So we're here now. And then it goes to the vein. So the blood going to the rest of the fish is circulating through what? Through veins. And then back to the heart. That blood, is it under high pressure or low pressure? Are you sure? It's under low pressure. Low pressure. What's the problem with low pressure? The blood circulates very what? Slowly. So, the fish does not have a problem in terms of mixing of the blood, but it has a problem in terms of having very low what? Blood pressure. So, the frog's disadvantage is that the blood mixes. The fish's disadvantage is that the blood pressure is very low in the vessels distributing the blood around the body. So you can see how the mammalian heart is an improvement over the increasing the blood pressure and also preventing the mixing between the left side and the right side of the heart. Okay? I will show you some animations about diseases, but in terms of like the basics of the heart, in terms of understanding blood pressure and how it affects like a fish or a frog and the mixing of the left and right side. That's pretty much it. Tomorrow we'll focus on blood pressure, but I'm going to stop now and show you guys some examples of diseases, okay?
Okay.
Alright?
The end.
Finito.